Hi, welcome. My name is Renee Gittens, and I'm the Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association. Today we have a fireside chat with REALTIME, and REALTIME is a CGI and animation studio. They are VFX specialists that focus on games as well as automotive and broadcast. They go the extra mile to create cutting edge content capable of transporting the viewer. Whether they are immersing gamers in distant alien worlds or placing buyers in the driving seat of their perfect car, they don't just make visuals, they craft belief. Today, I am joined by Stu Bailey, who is an art director and creative director at REALTIME, and Nico Sek, an animation director at REALTIME. Stu, Nico, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourselves? Stu, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a pleasure to be chatting to you. So thank you for the invite. Like I said, I direct projects creatively and also visually from an art direction point of view. Working closely with Nico. So my main responsibilities are across the game side of the company, where I kind of tend to direct most of those projects. I do get involved in the TV side of the studio as well, which is a new venture that we've only started kind of really getting into in the past couple of years, I would say. And that kind of originated from the quality of our cinematic work, really. So the TV world kind of saw what we were doing and could see how the same skill set could be applied to the TV industry. So in the TV world, I kind of tend to do more art direction than creative direction because there's a much different hierarchy of people to work with in the TV industry. And then we've got an automotive side to us as well. And I'm a little bit involved in that, but not as much as the other two sections of the company. So yeah, we work. I work across everything within the studio to some degree. So it's great fun and definitely challenging. A lot of variety, I would say.
Yeah, so I'm Nico. I'm a French animator who started about 22 years ago in France, and I moved to UK 15 years ago, something like that. And I've been working in various type of projects. Started with video games, which is your field. But then I moved to visual effects and feature animations, and I've focused a lot of my career about visual effects, working for the big studios in London. And at REALTIME, I've started in December last year, where I've had this animation director position, which means that I'm overviewing everything related to the animation in the studio. So all the technical aspect of recruitment and dealing with some strategical research for improving our animation quality, as well as supervising animation on all the projects that we are working on. So the video game trailer is the big part, but we have as well this TV series department, which is growing quite well. We have lots of good shows. Lots. We have few good shows, and with lots of different type of creatures, characters to animate. So it's really challenging. It's really nice company to work for.
Great, that's wonderful to hear. How is REALTIME different from your previous studios?
Well, on many aspects, actually, the main aspect is the scope of the job I've got to do. So previously, I was mainly animator, so I was focusing on animation. I had some leading experience, but not to the extent of managing a full department. Even though we're a small studio, the tasks are quite diverse. And I feel due to the size of the studio, I'm much more involved in all the aspects of the the creation of the shows we're working on. The fact as well that we work a lot with remote artists. It's very different from what I'm used, where I was in a team, sometimes with 20, 30 animators or more. Here, I have to deal with the artist online, mainly, because we get an animator in-house, but yeah, it's mainly online. So it's a different challenge, but it's really interesting on that aspect.
Yeah, certainly. And I think a lot of companies right now are dealing with working and figuring out what remote work online communications is like.
Yeah, definitely.
So, in terms of working together and having these smaller, more nimble teams, how do you see animation and creative direction influencing each other?
I think they're kind of integral, really. I think, when I always say that kind of I'll kind of have an overarching view and perception of what a task is, and almost a kind of a feel for what I want. But Nico is the one that technically can understand that, kind of description and make it real. So it's a really close relationship that we have together, and it's something that over the past year that has been great that we've built out from each time we work on a separate project together. It's just good to know that when you can have a higher level conversation with somebody about an emotion, say, you want a character to have a certain emotion or a certain feel or cadence to a scene or a shot. It's all well and good getting some reference together and having a conversation and pointing something out, but ultimately someone has to, physically direct someone, make that happen, and that's kind of the link between a creative director and the animation director is that passing of kind of a brief that is just words and doesn't really exist yet to him kind of being able to filter sometimes the nonsense that I talk into something that's that's a bit more kind of physical and can actually make it happen, really. So I think the two are, I don't know what you think, Nico. They're just inexplicably linked, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, we work together from the very beginning of the project. We talk together about the bidding process, about what is achievable regarding the constraints or the criteria that the clients are giving us, and trying to make the best of their idea. So there's lots of back and forth between Stu and me, mainly for the preparation, but as well when we work in production, we do regular reviews together.
Yeah.
Where I present what's been done by the animators, and we discuss about what can be improved, how the things are evolving, who is good at what, and we share, this kind of information, and it's good to have Stu's vision, because sometimes I'm into my thing, and I don't have necessarily the distance.
Yeah.
So it's good to have somebody with a different perspective to influence my vision on what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a funny thing. I mean, obviously, most people in the industry have come up from doing a different role, and I wasn't always doing directing. I started off as a concept artist, and I totally get that as well. But I've been working on a piece of art or matte painting or a concept back in the day, and thinking it's the best thing ever, and then someone will come over and go, "Yeah, it's really nice, but it isn't right." And it's that, and sometimes it's infuriating and things like that. But ultimately, that person is kind of seeing it from a different perspective. They're seeing it from maybe the client's perspective, or kind of they've not kind of been involved in it, kind of just in the act of physically making something. So just having a separate pair of eyes that can look over something and go, it's great, it's really nice, but you're just kind of missing this little angle that you need to kind of get in there. Maybe it's determined, but it's aggressive. It's determined rather than having more of a passive feel to it. Just little things like that are the conversations that we kind of tend to have, of just little tweaks and little changes that we'll want to make to something.
So
Yeah.
speaking of those angles, do you feel like Real Time has a particular style or type of flair that you usually show in these trailers and other products that you create?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a kind of studio that is very driven by our clients, and we really want to make our clients happy. And I tend to feel that clients are more and more involved these days than they used to be. A lot of them have got a clear vision, and a lot of them got a really great group of creatives internally as well. You know, so they come in for us a lot of time for our technical expertise, not just our creative expertise. So yeah, I think what we do is quality. It's our attention to detail, um, and it's our kind of within the studio. You know, we've got this thing of we say like everything has to have fidelity to it. Everything has to have a quality to it. So I just think we try to work within our client's world that they create. You know, that you'll understand this, Rene. You know, you create your own IP. You've created a world. You've spent a lot of time on the lore, on the backstory, understanding who the characters are, why they're in this world. So it's about empathizing and understanding your client's product as much as possible, and then seeing how you can just bring that extra level of fidelity and that extra level of quality to this universe that they've created, because you've got to be sympathetic to it. You know, it's come from them, and like I say, we get a chance to play with other people's worlds. You know, because we aren't creating our own IPs. We're making people realize the vision for for their IPs. So that I think, in my opinion, what we had is a layer of quality that brings a broad appeal, you know, that to a wider audience, to in order to bring eyes on their product.
Right. I mean, especially considering the size of studios you often work with, it makes sense that they have teams that could handle the creation of a trailer, but they're coming to you as experts to make sure that, they're truly producing the best that they can for their game to show that story and product.
Yeah, I mean, just like I said with Nico with his animation, Nico will take animation to a place where I can't take it, in terms of there's like 15-20% at the end that only Nico's eyes can see, if you know what I mean, that needs to be pushed. So that's and that's what a client comes to us for as well. It's like, even in a game, you can only spend so much time on in-game animation and in-game models, from poly counts to, kind of frame rate issues and all this kind of thing. And we can spend that extra 15%, 20% of quality that they just don't have time to do. And sometimes don't have the eye to do as well. So it's a combination of the both, I think.
Are there any clients that you've worked with that you've really appreciated, or that you've really appreciated their IP that's been particularly fun or interesting?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, personally, I don't have a long history in the company, so
yeah.
I can only talk about the project I've been working on there. But yeah, definitely, our last trailer for Rare was a really good experience. Very, very challenging, very creative on many aspects. Beyond actually what we can just see, because for the company as well, it has been a real challenge to change the way we were doing things, the pipe as well to some degree. We and it was at the beginning of the of the lockdown. So
yeah, it's probably one of our most challenging projects, and ultimately one of the ones that we're probably most proud of as well. But yeah, imagine, we started off in lockdown. It was just like, oh wow, this is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's when you're in the middle of the pile of difficulties that you have to challenge yourself, to push your boundaries, and to try to get the best of everyone, to try to find solutions to any new technical challenge, any new problems, any way you can improve the quality visually and in terms of animation, etc. Regarding all the constraints that we had, it was very, very interesting. And the relationship we had with Rare was very nice. They were very open and collaborative to make the best of this experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that working with Rare Games, they're one of our longest running clients, and we see ourselves almost as an extension of their team. We get on with them so well. But yeah, with the last project that we did that we helped realize, they just had so much amazing artwork that they'd sent us that it was like, wow, like how the hell are we going to make a trailer that looks as good as this artwork? So that's another great thing about working with those kind of clients, that they challenge you, because they're creating this world and they've got a really talented team internally that are producing some absolutely flawless designs. And you've got to try and help them realize them in 3D. So yeah, it was a really interesting project that we're all very proud of.
So in terms of working with clients and working together on your own teams, how do you ensure that you're staying productive and bringing out the best in each other and the best in the material you're working with, particularly while working remotely?
Lots of meetings.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Communication, isn't it? It's communication.
Exactly.
It's simple as that, really. Communication will never be as good as being in a studio with somebody. There's no denying that. You cannot just walking past someone and just something popping into your head and actually being able to have a conversation on the fly happens 10 times a day when you're in the studio. And out of it, every now and again will come a really good idea or something that wasn't expected, and that stuff doesn't happen as much when you're working remotely. But like as Nico said before, when we're on a project, I think I maybe had 20 meetings a day with every single person, every department, and it's keeping the wheels of the machine moving, and that's all it is really. It's just pure communication. And I've got to admit, as a studio, we excelled ourselves, and people said after the project had finished that it was probably some of the best communication we'd ever had as an overall studio, because we had to do it, and it was one of those things where sometimes out of adversity some positives come, if that makes sense, even though it still isn't as good as being in the studio. But I think overall some of the team members that sometimes maybe didn't feel like they were getting as good communication were getting better communication, so overall it kind of leveled out, I think, across the board.
Yeah, it is challenging for that aspect, but as well in terms of animation, I have to say for me it's quite practical to be in a way in my own bubble, to do not be always distracted, because that can be as well.
Is it me distracting you? That's why.
Not
I used to pop my head over the monitor, didn't I? Pop my head over. Hey, Nico.
No, but that's great. But at the same time, that can be difficult to focus fully on your task, on your duty, and to have this sort of conversation that you would like to have with your team when you are in the middle of a pool of artists who are regularly asking you for whatever information, or being pulled to a meeting that you don't necessarily need to be there, but just for a certain amount of time. The advantage of working remotely like that is that you can assist to a meeting and still continue to work. And for the animators, I try to compensate this lack of direct interaction by spending more time trying to establish a good relationship and trying to be as communicative as possible. And the thing is, I can perform. I can perform what I want to get in my room without disturbing the other member of the team. So
but back in the studio, Nico will be doing a call like this with a couple of freelancers, and obviously surrounded by, we had one big room with all the guys in it. Every department in one room, and Nico would have to stand up and start doing a performance to his screen to try and give him feedback. So you get like a few chuckles in the studio. So now he can do it in the luxury of his bedroom.
Trying not to knock the guys behind me.
Oh, it's a wonderful image.
Yeah, you should see sometimes. I finish my meeting with my guys when I was at the office. I finish and I look around and, what was that, Nico? Yeah, a bit of embarrassment.
Especially when you're
sometimes.
doing like a creature or an animal and you're like prancing around.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone gets very interested in what's being talked about then. So it sounds like previously when you were working in person at your studio, there was a lot of sort of almost passive communication or more natural communication. And now you're moving to have to set up more explicit communication to keep everyone on the same page. Has that been a easy transition? You know, have there been issues? Like, where have you found the right pacing of that and scheduling of that? You know, what solution has worked well for you and your team?
Was it an easy transition? I think it was. It was pretty seamless, but you know, it's one of those things that when you're when it's necessity and there isn't another option, you just kind of deal with it. I think if all of a sudden the powers that be would have come to the studio and said, "Okay, but there's a new incentive now. We're only going to do team meetings," there'd have been a lot more adversity and a lot more people kind of having a negative perception of it. Whereas I think the perception in the studio was, okay, this is how it's going to be, and we're all just going to deal with it. I think it's just a case of the way we work. Everything is driven by the pipeline, driven by it's like a factory line essentially. A needs to happen before B needs to happen before C. So it requires more backstage organization from production, from the head of whoever's producing the trailer, with myself. So you really need to make sure all your ducks are in line, because that you've got these meetings set up throughout the week, and if this isn't finished before your next meeting, then your next meeting is kind of pointless, really. So you have to then postpone it to the next time. So yeah, I think logistically the biggest thing is just really making sure that your backstage kind of production is laid out, and everything's scheduled properly, which which we kind of always do anyway, but it just had to be just that extra level of kind of scrutiny on that kind of thing. And the other thing was we were using a lot more freelancers because we were working remotely. Because what we would normally do is we'll get freelancers to come into the studio. Now everybody that was on the project was remote essentially. So if they aren't performing, or kind of their task is starting to take kind of longer, I felt it was slightly more difficult to actually kind of help and rein them in, because you might not necessarily be talking to them for maybe a day or so. Whereas if they were in the studio, you could, like I said a minute ago, you may be walking past the monitor and just say, that's an interesting color you've got going on there. Those kind of things that you pick things like that up all the time, where that's not quite how I imagined it, and that would take longer to find those problems when they did arise. So I'd say that was kind of one of the other biggest challenges that came out of it as well. Just the picking up of issues quick enough.
I think that's why we need to keep track of what our artists are doing on a regular basis. So I really try to get in touch with the animators every day, and maybe sometimes several times a day, to be sure that nobody's wasting time doing things on their own, in a way. We are there to serve the purpose of clients. They want to have specific intentions in their shots or sequences, and we really want to optimize the quality, to the time to get the best quality possible. So trying to redirect those artists on the right path.
keep the people on time and on schedule. Is always the killer.
And I found it was globally okay. So far, we did not have any major issue on that aspect.
Has COVID unexpectedly changed any of the other ways you work? You say that you're very pipeline focused. Has it affected the technical aspects of your creation?
Yeah. It's all about transferring data, isn't it? What we do is very data intensive. Now, rather than having two internal networks that you can almost seamlessly transfer files across, now everyone's working from their own internet connections and VPN and remote desktops. So that's probably the biggest revolution of. We were very lucky actually. There were obvious issues. People losing connection every now and again, and kind of someone would be remoting into the PC in the studio and the power goes, so they can't access it. So someone have to go into the studio and turn the PC on. All these little niggly things, but in general, everyone these days has got fiber. So everyone's pretty much got a decent broadband connection these days. So I think we were just lucky that the broadband revolution came when it did, like in this country anyway, about a year before COVID, because people, it wasn't too much of an issue. But still now, the biggest thing is one of the most intensive things that we do in the studio is the comp side of things. So that's when you've rendered everything out, but it's all in separate layers still. And then the comp team have to bring all these separate layers together and make it all look beautiful and put the finesse and the polish on things. And that is super, super intensive in terms of the amount of data that needs to be transferred. You could have a single frame of a movie that's, I don't know, 200, 300 megabytes, and that's made out of 10 layers. So you times that 200 by 10, that's for every single second on screen. So you talk about 10 minutes of that, you're talking hundreds of gigabytes of data that needs to be transferred constantly, day in, day out. You may have multiple compositors working at the same time. So that's kind of what we're working on at the moment in making that process a lot smoother, investing in faster networks and even quicker broadband than we've currently got, just to try and make that process a bit smoother. So I'd say on the whole, we were fine, but just certain parts of the pipeline really suffered, and it did elongate the process a little bit. But it's just all data transfer. I think that's the biggest thing that's come out of it is, we generate a lot of data with what we do. So yeah, that's been the big learning process.
Great. Before I get into the next question, we've got a little feedback. Nico, would you mind moving your mic a little closer to your mouth? Apparently, you're just slightly on the quiet side.
Yeah, really?
Sorry. It's all good. So we actually have a question from the audience along the lines of the topics we've been talking about. They were curious what tools you use or you like for managing production and facilitating your process and pipeline.
Yeah, I mean the main backbone is Shotgun. Shotgun Studio is what we use for running our projects. Obviously, Microsoft Teams has been vital as well, just from a communication point of view, for having meetings and setting up, kind of chats on there as well for day-to-day things. But yeah, the main piece of software that we use for organization is Shotgun. So we will get all the projects set up on there, get all the shots set up on there, do all our feedback through that as well. And also it's really good. It's almost like Facebook, you've got like a front page that everybody can access and everyone can see what everyone else is working on as well. So it's good, it's a good way of everyone keeping up to date what's going on in other departments within the project.
And in a way, it's good to archive as well the communication that have been going on, so you can refer fairly easily to information that you would have missed or.
We've got versions of things as well. So if something's getting worse and worse, we can go back to version 18 instead of 22 because it looked better then. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and everyone can see the progress at the same time and comment. So it's a very constructive and collaborative way to work.
Yeah.
Awesome. I haven't had the pleasure of using Shotgun myself, but it's cool to see how or hear how it has been helpful. So moving on, Stu, how has your design background influenced the way that you direct projects?
I think it's a funny thing. I think the way that you think about design is exactly the same way as you think about directing. Really, in my opinion, it's something that I've thought for a long time. All the elements of design are the same. It's funny because when you start learning something new, there's always parallels that you find between the different things that you learn. And a lot of the time when you learn something new, there's just a different word for the same thing. So when I was learning about, as I say, coming from a design background doing concept art, learning about how to design a vehicle, about proportions, about ratios of what makes something look beautiful, about composition, about color balance, and all these things. That when you start to learn about direction and cinematography, it's all the same principles. The same principle goes into designing a car as that goes into designing a beautiful frame in a movie. You're looking for balance in the frame. You're looking for good elements of design for areas of interest and areas of simplicity. You've got your eye on kind of color balance and composition and all these kind of things. And yeah, I really feel that kind of going through the process of a true art education. Starting off back in the day, I did art and design at college, which was more of a fine art course. So learning a little bit more about abstract art and that kind of things, and then specializing in illustration, then concept art afterwards. Just that whole education for me allows me when I am directing something, just from a cinematography point of view, and just working with cameras and working with edits and stuff like that. It's exactly the same. This is exactly the same principles. They're just called a different name. So I found there's lots and lots of parallels between the two, and I felt, and it's really good because as you get older and wiser, as I am doing, I just feel like not having a fear to learn new things is the way you should be, because the more you learn, the more parallels and the more consistencies you see in between different subject matters, and it becomes less and less scary the more that you learn as well. So just having the attitude of kind of always learning new things and always kind of pushing yourself in that way, I think it is the way that I tend to try and do things.
Yeah, I think it's super important to have sort of a growth mindset. I'd certainly consider myself more of a jack of all trades, and it has only helped me as I've managed larger and larger teams.
Yeah.
Nico, how do you think animation style can impact and emphasize artist choices?
Well, the thing is, animation needs to work symbiotically with art direction. So we are there more to serve the purpose of the art direction. Obviously, the type of style of animation will have a dramatic effect on what we want to convey. But I would consider that we are mainly at the service of the art direction. So we make graphic choices from early stages, which will be impacting the animation. So the most obvious is what type of animation are we gonna do? Is it gonna be hyper realistic, or is it gonna be more stylized, cartoony? And from then we try to establish different take on each characters, to develop them, to make a graphic bible of each characters or creatures, to define how they will be fitting to the universe we have to describe in the trailers or in a TV series. As well, we need to find some style which are not pulling out the audience from the dramatic purpose of the show we are doing. What I mean by that is that you can see sometimes some features, and often done by young artists, where they want to show that they can animate, so they overdo things, and it distracts from the real purpose of the shot, the emotion they want to bring. So yeah, that's one of the big challenges, to find the right balance, and as well to fit with what you were just saying before, Stu, all those graphic aspects which are building an image, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're building frames and each frame has to be crafted.
Yep.
And there's a sort of ping pong of balance between the animation, where we're gonna put our characters, how it's gonna move through the frame, and the light, for example, the lighting, how it's interacting with what's the best way basically to give the most dramatic effect for the shot to serve the intention of the animation, and as well to do not overstep on other departments.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was clear.
No, and it's a funny thing because there's so many different degrees of what is the right animation style. Like for instance, on the last project that we worked on, the brief was naturalistic but not realistic. What does that mean? What is that? So we have to discern what that is. And eventually you find that balance. It doesn't come straight away because you're still trying to figure it out yourself. It's got to move in a naturalistic way, but in a slightly defy gravity, slightly be a little bit more graceful than it would be in reality. But at the same time, you're not looking at it and thinking, oh, like they're floating, they're walking underwater. So you've got to find that really, really fine balance to, and it only takes a few degrees from being realistic to land on the right spot. But each project has got those kind of little decisions that we have to make. And like Nico said, it's all driven by the style of the world that's being created. So if you have a photorealistic person doing that, it would look absolutely ridiculous. So, if the visual design the client has established warrants it, and that's the feel and the mood that they want to try and get across in that world, and then we have to just find these little different tones of animation to fit within that.
So Nico, I know you have extensive experience when it comes to realistic style animations, but do you have a favorite animation style? If you were to work on, your ideal project, what animation style would you want to use?
Well, that's a style that I couldn't do because it's. I'm a great fan of anime. I love all the production from Studio 4C or Ghibli, and I'm not a 2D animator, so I would not be able to achieve this kind of dream. But yeah, that's what I like in Japanese animation is this expressivity they have, the efficiency. They find shortcuts to give strong poses, but with good timing, and all that being within tight budgets. So it's always giving some very efficient type of animation, and visually they are very creative. So yeah, that's the sort of thing I'd like to work on. And to some extent, I found that the experience of Everwild was probably the closest experience I had to go near to this sort of type of animation.
It's funny with that style of animation, with the Ghibli stuff especially. You always really feel like that place exists that you're seeing in those animations, and I think that was the same with Everwild. The client had created this world that you really felt like it existed, and I think that's kind of one of the really standout features of Japanese animation, is that sense of place. So you're just so immersed, aren't you, with the worlds that they create, just the environments and just the little details that they put into it. Love it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how that story and art and animation can all come together to truly bring you to another world and introduce you to the characters within it.
Yeah, definitely.
To bring the magic alive.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm rather curious. Do you have different workflows for creating these pre-rendered trailers versus in-game cutscenes?
Nico probably doesn't, from an animation point of view.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, really. It just depends on how complex the character or rig you're working on, really, I suppose, Nico, isn't it?
Yeah. I would say that maybe when it's pre-render, you have a bit less polygons, so it can be a bit more fast to work with. But seriously, we don't really see much difference these days. So so it's.
I mean, in terms of poly counts and being, a bit more careful about that kind of thing. Obviously, in engine and pre-rendered, you don't really have to worry about that too much. We can chuck millions and millions and millions of polygons in a scene, and a character can be much more high resolution with displacement maps. And I think with the Game of Thrones trailer we had each character had, I think it was 3 4K maps per head, and then the bodies had maybe 12 more. That would probably be the whole budget for a game. We had that on one character, so it's just about the amount of detail you can throw at something, really. Obviously, game engines, especially in Real Engine with UE5 demo recently, is seemingly getting to the point where that's not going to be an issue there either, which is very exciting. So yeah, the only difference is just the amount of data you can throw at it, really.
Great. So do you have any advice for game developers who are currently watching that are looking to create compelling trailers and cutscenes in their own games? Like, what are the core pillars of making a compelling trailer?
I think it's different with every client, really. But ultimately, you want people to be intrigued. You want them, in my opinion, to be going away and asking questions and having to find out what the answers to those questions are as well, which ultimately results in people finding out about your website, about how to log into the game and about, how to kind of get on board with it. So I think it's one of those things where what we always try and do is, trigger a question and at the end kind of leave a cliffhanger or leave something that's still unanswered for the viewer to go and explore and find out, why they should find out what happens afterwards. So yeah, I think that's the main thing that we try to do. I mean, I always liken what we do to the TV world, to more of a commercial world, really, because what we do is very short form. Average is probably 2 minutes per trailer, so we have to really grab your attention straight away. So it's a case of not wasting any time, getting the viewer intrigued, but also kind of maybe try and leave them with a little bit of a question at the end that they have to go and explore, I think.
Leaving a question at the end, I think, is great advice. That's not something I had personally considered before, but it makes sense. It sort of drives action.
Yeah, definitely.
So, one of our viewers asked, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out, self-taught, and looking to craft the skills to get into game animation? They say that they're adults doing a career switch, but found that most internships are for school graduates. How can they get their foot in the door?
Well, the main thing is about having a solid demo reel. So for that, they need to explore the different aspects of animation. It depends what they really want to do, but I would say for video game, it's probably about physical performances of creatures and showing that there's a good understanding of the animation principles. Nowadays, you get as well more and more of acting, which is involved for the trailers. So it's a good thing to be able to perform some acting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are some great courses online now, for animation, aren't they? Like Animation Mentor,
Yeah,
and all these kind of things where you can do it in your own time. If you're working all day, if you've got the dedication and determination to do it, you can put those hours in before work in the morning or at night when you get home. But when we're hiring, Nico, it's not only really specific, really, isn't it? We'll have a task in mind. And then we'll hire someone for that task because you can see it in the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes all it takes is to have one really good example of something, and for someone to be looking for someone to do that task, So I think spreading yourself too thin of trying to do everything is, you're never going to do it well enough for someone to go, I'm going to take a chance on that person. I think if you can do one thing really well, and then someone goes, well, I need that doing. Come and do that for me, and then that's you're in. Then you're in the door. If you do a good job, they'll work with you again. So I think it's just it's about quality. Just having anything you do have on your reel, just make sure it's really, really good quality. And anything that isn't, just don't put it on there.
Exactly. It's better to have a short demo reel full of quality work rather than putting all the stuff you've been doing, because it's actually deserving to have something weak compared to some strong pieces. Like sometimes I see some really nice animation in the same reel beside something which is very weak, and it makes me wonder if the person has a notion of what's really quality.
Yeah,
because it shows that they can't decide,
Yeah, and there's also a lot of misleading as well in the industry as well, where someone will work on something alongside somebody else, but they'll put the final result in their reel, so, and then you'll get maybe another piece of work in the reel that looks really bad. So you think, well, did they actually do that? It's like, why would that person who did that quality piece of work put that thing in their reel as well? So instantly you feel a little bit cautious about that person. Whereas, if you can just keep to the quality stuff, it just shows you've got a good eye
exactly
for what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly, in the game industry, I always recommend that people work on their portfolios, and having a compelling portfolio is really the number one thing you can do to start and advance your career.
And as much as possible, ask for feedback from professionals, because it's one thing to work on your own or with your mates, but when somebody doesn't really know you, he will be probably more frank about a bit more honest about what's going on, and that will help you. It's not always easy to be subject to criticism, but as long as the critiques are constructive, it's all good to take.
Yeah, and you won't get anywhere unless you can take criticism.
Exactly.
So yeah, learn to take it well.
Yeah, one of my close friends is a character artist, and she was trying to find a job, and she was able to go to GDC and get feedback from an art director who really ripped her portfolio apart. But because of that feedback that she got, she was able to clean up her portfolio, make a lot of improvements, and those improvements that she made based on his feedback got her a job at a AAA studio as a character artist, which is obviously quite rare.
So. Yeah, and nothing's personal. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to make a product.
Yeah.
And if you can't, if you can't work in that system and be effective, then it's not personal. It's just the fact that you just literally can't enable us to do what we need to do. So, but some people do take it to heart, and it isn't meant that way at all ever. We're all just trying to get through the day, trying to make what we're making.
And
at the one end of the day, when you are in production, you get feedbacks anyway, so you have to you have to comply, basically.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling of what your answer is going to be here, but one of our viewers wanted to double check and see, are you really saying that quality of the portfolio trumps experience?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if someone sent me a link now and it was the most beautiful 5-second animation I'd ever seen, and that person never worked anymore, that's totally irrelevant if it never worked anywhere, isn't it? The only chance you're taking is whether they can take feedback, whether they're professional, because you never know those things until you work with somebody. Whereas if someone's worked at a studio for like 3 or 4 years, you know that they must have been pretty reliable. They must have been a pretty good colleague because they've stayed somewhere for a while, or X, Y, Z. So there's always that risk. They may be really talented, but an absolute nightmare to work with.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you think, Nico. I think
No, it's exactly that. Well, the experience will give you obviously the chance to work on different type of work, different type of creature or characters, and maybe different type of animation as well. which is always a plus. But as Stu said, what we receive is the demo reel, so we make our judgment based on that, and then we look at any information which can complete to nail down the appropriate portfolio for the appropriate position. So
and you can never tell as well. I mean, sometimes you'll get a really good reel and be excited about working with someone in it, and it will be a very difficult experience.
Yeah.
Some of that's down to us by them working on a task that maybe isn't their skill set. So you're taking a chance on someone just being talented and hoping that they can do something just a little bit different to what you've seen in the portfolio. And other times you'll get someone whose portfolio doesn't seem that strong, but they'll absolutely blow you away when you work with them personally.
Yeah.
You can never tell. It's different every time.
There's a bit of gamble for sure.
Yeah, there's always a gamble.
but we try to reduce the chance part.
Yeah. You build up a good loyal team of freelancers over time, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any tips or recommendations for people who are looking to have their reel or portfolio reviewed to get that critical feedback?
Well, what they can do is to contact directly some artists online, through LinkedIn or any other platforms. There are people who are freely giving feedbacks. I've done it quite a lot in the past, maybe less now because I'm too busy, but otherwise there are some I know that in London there's something called Bring Your Own Animation, which is an event where any animator can bring his demo reel, and you get few professionals who are there to give feedbacks. I know that this event is happening in several other cities and in other countries. But yeah, the best is to contact people and see if they are willing to help.
Yeah, and truthfully, the IGDA can help with that as well. We do have a global mentorship program, so if the viewer who is watching or asked that question wants to sign up for our global mentorship program, we can pair you with artists who can give you that critical feedback. We also have a wonderful Discord where you can just put your portfolio and ask for advice. So you can find both of those on our website. Our mission is to support and empower game developers in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers. So please use our resources. That's literally what we're here for. One person asked, do you utilize actors, or have all of the mocap captures been happen before they get to you?
Yeah, definitely. Normally I chuck Nico in the suit. We do sometimes, yeah. If it's not for a detailed facial performance. But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the pipeline for the latest project, Nico, that we're doing?
Yeah, so well, it depends on the type of project we're working on, depending on the quality that we want to get from the mocap system. But usually what we do is we mocap and we rework a lot the work to be to fit with the style we wanna do. So we had very stylized project where we use mocap as a more like a base of work, and some where they are way more realistic, where it's we try to get the best quality data from the mocap system. So you get different type of facilities which are providing mocap motion captures, and yes, sometimes we do a capture of the body, sometimes with the finger, sometimes with the facial as well.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we're doing 30 minutes of full CG for a client for a top game. So our head of production cast all the performers in that, so it's a super photorealistic project. So we cast the actors internally, audition them, send them to the client, and you get their approval, and then take them to the mocap studio, with a director, with a live action director, direct the performances. And for that particular one, we did DI 4D facial capture. So, the head mounted scanning device that we can, I don't know how many frames a second it is for the scans, but essentially, we have a 60 frames a second for the scan data. So, we've got all that going through whilst capturing the body performance at the same time. And we had an audio stage there as well, so we captured the audio at the same time. So different solutions really. That was a super high end solution where we want as photorealistic and authentic performances for that actor gave on the day. And other times we just use mocap as a starting point really. It may just be something to flesh out the animatic or the previs at the beginning of a project, just to get the pacing or cadence of an edit for certain actions that need to happen. And then Nico will totally eradicate most of that and hand animate over it and make it much more graceful and beautiful. So sometimes it's reference and sometimes it is we need to capture it as authentically as possible.
Yeah, and our goal is to develop our own studio, motion capture studio.
Yeah.
So we are on the process of assessing which system we're gonna use and how many units, etc.
Yeah.
So back in the 80s, video games and movies probably couldn't be more different from each other. But nowadays, it seems like their pipelines are overlapping a ton. Motion capture, use of game engines to do real time or just scene rendering for movies. Do you think we're going to continue to see this crossover of tools and the development of tools becoming more supportive of both, film and games, or do you think we're going to get a divergence again?
Yeah, there is a definite feeling that the two are coming together. It's with virtual production, say on The Lion King, Jon Favreau used Unreal Engine to essentially build most of the sets in Unreal, and he filmed them virtually, and then obviously the guys ILM or wherever kind of take those sets out and make them super photorealistic. So you can see that in terms of how the pipeline are combined, and also with Mandalorian as well, where they're using huge screens to project, kind of massive backplates that kind of illuminate the actual characters, almost like they're in a real world. The difference at the moment is it's just a quality thing. Is that you still don't get the fidelity and crispness, and there is issues with depth of field. There are issues with fringing around objects that you just can't let go in a movie, or you just couldn't let go in a high-end TV series. It's just not that quality just yet. But where it is being used is, like, say, in pre-production, in pre-visualization, and in these virtual backplates that everyone's starting to use at the moment. So I don't know. It's basically Epic Games feel like they're just growing and growing and growing, and Unreal Engine's becoming more and more powerful. I've got no doubt one day it will be good enough to do the whole thing. But it just depends whether one of the other guys, one of the other render engines that are out there fight back, and start, and it just comes to a point where they all just do the same thing. I think it will diverge to that level that you can choose whatever engine you like. There's these days they're developing open source data, so now we don't even have to worry about what software we use. So we can save the open source data to be able to talk between different pieces of software, and it'll just understand. So I do think within 5 years or something like that, there'll just be a divergence of all softwares and all kind of renderers that it'll just be more freeform, which is all for the good, really. I think then it just makes our life so much easier, and we won't have to worry about if one person uses that type of software or this type of software. We can all just use what we want and just all collaborate freely. In an ideal world.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we're at time here. There's a few questions that weren't answered, but I wanted to refer the audience to REALTIME's website, because you have wonderful blogs about your production process and other industry insights and tips. So I highly recommend that everyone check that out, especially if you had questions that weren't answered. Stu, Nico, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you have social media or anything that you recommend people follow, feel free to mention it now. Anything?
Not really. Instagram. You can get me on Instagram. I've got a few images on there, but other than that, too busy. Too busy doing stuff.
Fair.
Yes.
So,
Okay,
cool.
wonderful. Well, thank you both, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.